I'll follow.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for tuning in to the first segment of Career Talk Tuesday. It's a relaunch of a program that I started back in 2017 and 2018. Happy to bring it back. My first guest is Tammy. Tammy is a co-founder of her own company, PCQ Consulting LLC. And she also has an amazing track record. She started from healthcare and now she owns her own company. So today we're going to be talking to Tammy. She's going to talk to us about her career journey, all the good and the bad, the struggles and obstacles, and what led her to create her own company to be a co-founder. And let's tune in, listen to Tammy. Also, if you have questions for Tammy near the end of the segment, we'll have a live Q&A for about 10-15 minutes. If you want to ask Tammy questions, you can type it in right below in the comment section and we will read it out and she will be happy to stick around for 10-15 minutes to answer any questions. Tammy, first of all, thank you for hopping on.
Thank you for inviting me.
Joining me as my first guest and sharing your career journey. So let's start with how did you start your career?
So I started my career. I actually was going to school for nursing. I was in school to be a nurse. And I started working for a healthcare staffing company, staffing nurses. And at the time we were recruiting international nurses, primarily from India and the Philippines. And while I was going to nursing school, my boss, who was amazing, said to me, "Why are you going to be a nurse? You don't want to be a nurse." And she was right. I didn't. I did not. I don't like the way people smell. And you can't be a nurse if you have a problem with the way people smell. Bodily functions and smells. And so I dropped out of college for nursing and started pursuing a career in staffing. And so I did a lot of recruiting of nurses internationally, managing them, placing them in hospitals all across the country, and loved it. So I wasn't cut out to be a nurse, but I loved helping nurses find jobs. So that's how I started my career.
So how did you end up starting your own company? Because now you're a co-founder.
Now I'm a co-founder of PCQ Consulting. So after I left staffing, I moved into the world of pharmacy, and I started working for a sterile compounding pharmacy here in the Fort Lauderdale area. And when I started there just as a licensing person to help them with their licensing for the pharmacy. And then I was approached by my HR director, who had reviewed my resume and said, "I think you'd be a good fit for our department upstairs. They were having a lot of turnover and culture issues." And she said, "I think you could really do a good job with turning that around." And so I went upstairs initially as an intern director for their intake department. And we did just that. We kind of turned the culture around. We had better numbers than any other director had before. And my VP at the time wanted to take what I had done in that department in terms of the culture and emulate that across the company, because there was the company culture overall. And what we had in our department was so unique that we had other people from other departments wanting to transfer into my department, which created some conflict with other managers because they were starting to lose people to me. And it became fraught at the company. And so my VP at the time was getting ready to leave the company. She had been there for 9 years. And when she left, I decided to leave about 2 months after she did. And her and I talked, and she said, "Wouldn't it be great if we started our own company? Like, you are really great at building company culture. You're so good at, diversity, inclusion, and that whole culture mix." And she is phenomenal at the operations side of a business. And so we decided at the end of last year to kind of take the end of last year off, and at the beginning of this year to focus and build our consulting business, helping companies figure out what their company culture is. And if it's not one that they want, how to be intentional in creating the culture that you want in your organization.
So, I'm going to ask you a question because you have now transitioned to an entrepreneur. Before I go back to the career,
Mm-hmm.
How has it been, the transition from being an employee to now running your own company? Do you find it challenging or no?
No, well, I don't find it challenging because the career, the business that we're doing. I think had this been any other business, it would probably be challenging to me. But because what we do is central to who we are as people, which is trying to make the workplace a better place for people, and doing that through listening and kindness. So because it's so central to who we are as people, the business part of it hasn't been hard. It's actually been pretty easy for us. I wouldn't say it's been easy in terms of going out and getting business, and convincing companies, and CEOs and even some HR directors that they need to do something with their company culture. But for the ones that we have been working with, it's been a good experience for us. It just feels like we've transitioned from being employees to ourselves. So for us, what's big for us is servant leadership. And so no matter what we're doing, whether we're the employees or the owners, we always view ourselves as servants in the work that we do.
I'm going to ask you a question just to stay on this topic for a little bit, is because a lot of people have this thing where they're so afraid to take the next step in their career, or in your case, like, you made that leap and you're like, okay, we're going to run our own company. So many people are scared to do things because even as simple as being a contractor, you can make more money, but the whole stability, I want stability, I want stable income. So how did you navigate through that and then made that jump?
So what I did, I knew I was getting ready to move into kind of creating something for myself. And so I was very intentional with my funds before I made that move. And I think if you are going to move into creating something for yourself, you need to give yourself a bit of a cushion, and give yourself a time frame for how long you can make this work, before you may have to get either a part-time job or just take some other job that you want that will bring you money until you get, the amount of clients that you want or the amount of contracts that you want. So for those people who are afraid to do that, I would say plan ahead. Just be intentional in what it is you want to do. I mean, it's one thing if you lose your job and then you have no other choice and you have to kind of go and create something for yourself. But if you're thinking about making the decision to go open up your own business, I would say be intentional and plan ahead. So like I said, I made sure I had about 6 to 7 months of savings to be able to cover me, and my business partner did as well. So that gave us time to really do our business, go about getting our clients and working the business, and not being concerned about my bills and how am I going to pay my bills. And the thing about entrepreneurship is it is not for, it's not for the weak. Like, you have to be committed to this. And if you aren't committed to being an entrepreneur, because sometimes you're going to have to do things you don't want to do. You're going to have to not be able to go shopping when you want to go shopping, and do all the things that extra income allows for you to do. But if what you're trying to build is a business, those are some sacrifices you're going to have to make.
Yeah, I always say, to be an entrepreneur, you have to be a risk taker. You have to be willing to take risks, because without risk taking, you won't be able to be an entrepreneur, because entrepreneur isn't stable. Like, I'm an entrepreneur, and my dad was a serial entrepreneur.
Yeah.
And learning from him was, you have to take risks. You can't play it safe.
Nope.
And there's no such thing as stability, because it's a business. There'll be ups and downs, low and high. And if you can't juggle that, then entrepreneur is not for you.
And the thing is, I like to say, bet on yourself, because even if you are working a job, that's a risk. The business can go out. I mean, COVID happened 2 weeks within COVID, people were losing their jobs. So even the thing you think is stable can become unstable, right?
Yep.
And so every day you show up taking a risk on that company that they're going to be around for you. Take the risk on yourself.
I use the same example with people. I'm like, well, we don't live in what's permanent. It's
Nothing.
like 20, 30 years ago, permanent job actually meant permanent.
Yeah.
But nowadays, there's nothing permanent. Companies can restructure. Larger companies always restructure out. They restructure, and then out you go.
Right.
COVID-19 is a perfect example of what happened, and all these mass layoffs happen, temporary, permanent, whatever. But hey, they're happening, and you can't live in this fear of
Right.
permanent. I
There is
want
no such
permanent.
thing. The permanent went away with I think our parents. I think
Yeah.
when our parents had jobs, my mother worked for the hospital, which is probably why I went into nursing too. But my mother worked in the hospital and she retired from that job. But my dad was a contractor. He always worked for himself. So I had a bit of seeing what stable looked like and what risk taking looked like. And my dad, people would come to him and say, listen, can you build this or can you do that? He was a contractor. He made his own hours and he set his own prices. And so there was something freeing in that for my father. And it was something nice to see that, kind of like your dad. It's just nice to see that they were charting their own course and making their own way. And like I said, my mom was a worker, but back then you could work a job, whether it's in the government or even in a big corporation, and get a pension and retire. That's not the world we live in now.
No.
And so every day that you clock in, it is a risk that you're taking that this job will be here. So again,
Exactly.
risk on yourself.
So now let's take a step back to beginning of your career. What steps did you take to grow your career and be successful and get all the way to like a director level before you made the jump to entrepreneurship? But your journey from beginning to a director, what steps did you take to get to that level, to constantly keep building your career?
For me, I made sure I networked with people within my organization, every company I was in, anything that I wanted to learn, any department I wanted to learn, I made sure to introduce myself and network with those managers and directors. I think what happens is, and I find this true mostly for employees that are people of color. I was having a conversation with another gentleman on a podcast, and we were talking about how companies are doing a good job with diversity in terms of recruiting and hiring. But then there's this gap in between when employees, particularly people of color, start working and the promotion part of it. And he said, why did I think there was this gap in there? And I said, I think some of it is sometimes all employees, but particularly employees of color, don't normally go up and talk to managers and directors or people that are working jobs that they're interested in or have positions they may want to do. They're not really good about engaging their managers or their leaders about what it is that they do and the work that they do and showing interest in learning something else. And so when I started in staffing, I started in as a credentialer, just kind of credentialing nurses to go to work. And then I became a bit of a recruiter. And then I became the manager, managing them all. And I was always in my CEO's office. I was always sitting and learning from her and understanding what her thought process was, how she was running the business, and just learning. And so for me, throughout my career, no matter what job I went into, I was always talking to or learning from the person that was doing the job
that you wanted
to do and doing it well. And so to be here as an entrepreneur, I always think back to my first boss in the staffing that told me to quit nursing because she's like, that's not what you're supposed to be doing. And she created opportunities for me that I wouldn't have had otherwise. And so I watched her be a great CEO and took those lessons along on my career journey. And now we're here.
So would you say your bosses contribute, like versus having a bad boss? How important the success in your career contribute back to having a great boss?
I think both. I think having great bosses and having bad bosses, because you learn from your bad bosses the things that you don't want to be when you become a manager or become a boss. For instance, but in my director position, I learned a lot about how not to be the kind of boss I didn't want to be. And I learned, because my great boss, she was great about teaching and mentoring, but she could at times be a brute in the office. And she could at times be mean and dismissive, not to me, but to other people in the office. And so I learned early, like, it's not okay just to be nice to the people you like. You have to be that way with all your employees. So I think good bosses and bad bosses teach you a lot about the kind of manager you want to be, the kind of owner of your business you want to be. And so I think both bosses, good and bad, there's lessons to be learned from them both.
So speaking of, people of color, and so I'm going to touch on a topic about this is, did you at any point in your career felt limited because of your color, being a person of color? Did you face obstacles in your career because of this?
I did. And I keep harkening back to my old boss in the staffing business. When she told me to leave school, nursing is not what you want to do. You are really good at the people part of being able to connect with these nurses and get them to trust you in a way that's going to be good for our company. You're really good at building relationships. And when we were getting ready to go into hospitals to speak with like CNOs and director of the hospitals and VPs of the hospitals, I remember saying to her, she was like, well, okay, we'll set up the appointment and go talk. And I was like, I think I was like maybe 25 at the time. And I was like, I can't go. First of all, I don't even have a degree. These are like CNOs of like chief nursing officers of hospitals. I'm talking about like big wigs in the hospital. And I'm like, we're negotiating contracts here for getting 30, 40 nurses into hospitals. There's a lot of money on the line. There's people's lives on the line. And I was like, I need you to go. And I remember her sitting down with me and she's like, you were just as smart as the people in those rooms. You were just as capable as the people in those rooms. You have nothing to fear. You know our business. You know our nurses. You know the contracts. You know what the deals are. Go do it. And I was terrified. And when I would go into rooms with these hospital executives, and it's one city in Florida. I'm in Florida. There was a hospital we were working with up in North Florida, and it was known to not be the most welcoming place for people of color. In fact, I think it was a majority white hospital. And I remember the first time walking into the room, and I was having a discussion, and I think 3 or 4 of the people wouldn't even look up. They wouldn't even look up and talk and engage with me. And I thought, oh God, this is not going well. Like we're going to blow this. And
yeah,
I'm fortunate that there was this one woman, and I'll never forget her. Her name is Rita J. Rita J is this tall, I think she's Scandinavian, white woman with short hair. And she walked into the room, and I was talking at the time, and she made everybody stop what they were doing to pay attention to what I was saying. And I realized that I was letting my nervousness and my own insecurity run that meeting. And when she kind of did that break, I was like, okay, these are just people, they're no better than I am. And I was able to carry that meeting out. But I will say it's been quite a few instances like that where I've gone into the room and they're not expecting me. One, because my name doesn't give away who I am. I have what sounds like a very Caucasian name. So if somebody says, well, we're going to send Tammy Triolo, they're not expecting me. And oftentimes if we were having conversations on the phone, they couldn't quite identify what race I was based on the way I spoke. And so I've had those instances. And I think the way you overcome those is you overcome those with your confidence. And I think sometimes what happens with people of color, as we go into room in spaces where people don't want us to be, we can allow our own insecurities about that to mute what we know is our competence. And so you're going to have people that don't think you're as smart, that don't think you're as capable, that don't think you're as bright, and you overcome that with your confidence.
You know what? Everything you're saying, and I'm like nodding because I'm like, yeah, I feel like you already know this obstacle is going to be in your way because you're a person of color. Right. And I was having this conversation with a common connection we both have is Gil. Yeah. I'm like, till this day, I never reflected back on my career until that big episode that happened a few weeks ago about George Floyd.
Yeah.
And then I started analyzing my career, and I was like, oh my God, all my bosses were white. But I never looked at it that way. I never looked at it that way. I never, maybe because I had a strong father figure who ran a business. He never let anything stand in his way. That I think just the way we were raised, but also mentally, you're telling yourself, oh yeah, well, this is going to be an obstacle. So, don't make it an obstacle and just keep
Right.
pushing through.
Yeah.
And you just tend to, I don't know, I guess on me anyways, unknowingly, I just turned a blind eye to not turning a blind eye, just keep pushing through. And yeah, I've even worked in, now that I'm reflecting back to your conversation, it's, yeah, a lot of times, well, mine was pretty obvious. Mine was pretty obvious.
Giving you away before you walked in the room.
But the shock comes when I open my mouth and speak English, and it's like, oh.
And you speak it without an accent.
Yeah. So how do you learn? How did you learn? I'm like, yeah, I'm born and raised in Canada. So it's the opposite reaction happens.
Yeah.
And so, yeah. So the question I had was, how do you build that confidence? Your boss pushed you, but when you're in that room, with all these people, how did you have that switch? Because sometimes people can't do that switch.
I think for me, like I said, I think it was that other, and this is why it's important, I think, for allies in workplaces, if you are a person of color, because I had never met Rita J, but Rita J had been very aware. She was a white woman who was very aware of the racial stuff that was happening within that hospital. And so although her white counterparts weren't and didn't care because nobody they weren't dealing with anybody other than white people, she was. So when she came into the room and kind of broke that energy, it was a reset for me. And so now if I go into rooms and I'm the only person there, and if it's all white people, I automatically going and assuming there's at least one ally in this room. Because I think if you don't think of it that way, then you feel intimidated right out the jump. So I'm always assuming there's at least one ally in this room that will allow me to speak and get my presentation out. And so I think once that energy broke in the room, it was just easier for me to go forward, because then I had that moment of resetting of, yeah, I mean, this is our business. I'm bringing our business to them. They don't know this business. I do. I have to educate them on this. And I think once you understand that, and that's why I said your confidence is going to have to overtake your insecurity, because if you know what you know, then you share that. I think sometimes if people don't know enough, it's enough to kind of break their confidence. And it's like, well, I'm not sure what it is I'm supposed to be doing. I'm not sure how am I supposed to be saying this. And it can create more insecurity. So if you know your business, or you know your trade, or you know your field, let your confidence overcome your insecurity.
Okay. So now I'm going to ask you about regrets or a biggest mistake you made in your career that even today you think back and look back on it. So what's that one big mistake that you've made in your career that you still today look back and, maybe in time you can go back and change this? What's that one big mistake?
The one big mistake, and I was actually talking to my business partner because I got the questions, and I said, I think the one big mistake is I didn't take enough time for me. I was so busy trying to be everything for everybody, especially in the workplace, because the nature of our job, my job was, I was handling people's lives. I'd been working with these nurses for 2 years before they even got to America. And so in my desire to make sure that their transition was smooth and easy and that they were integrated as well, I just kept going, and I never took breaks for myself. And I looked up and it was 4 years later and I was completely burnt out. And I wish I had taken time to turn off the phone, that I didn't have to be on called 24/7. And I think part of that was I was so young and I was so eager to learn and so eager to prove myself in business that I didn't take care of myself. And I think that's something that's not unique to me. I think that's unique to most young professionals. You
Yeah.
feel like you have to hustle, hustle, hustle all the
Yeah.
time. And you really, really don't, because you're going to burn out on the thing that you love to do, and it's going to make you not love doing it. And so I wish I would have taken more time for myself, instead of all that traveling and moving and going. And so I think it's the one big regret. And because when I left staffing, it was so bittersweet for me that in everything else I've done, I've made sure to take time for myself and not overextend myself, overwork myself. Like, there's a reason when you're on the airplane, they tell you put your mask on first before you
Yeah.
face somebody else, because you got to be okay to take care of the people you want to take care of. So I think that was my biggest mistake. I didn't
So
take care of myself.
what steps have you put in now to ensure that this big mistake you made 4 or 5 years ago is, as an entrepreneur, you're not making the same mistake? Because being an entrepreneur is also constantly work. It's a hustle. You gotta go get business and deliver and all that stuff. So you're wearing multiple hats, and you want to answer your phone because they could be your potential clients, and all that. Because I went through this too. So, what steps are you taking now to ensure that you don't burn out? You're not constantly working 24/7, and you've put that balance. What steps have you taken to do that?
I allow voicemail to be used. I do. I allow people to go to voicemail, and sometimes I'll get text messages, and if I'm up to it, I'll respond. If not, I'll respond the next day. And another thing that I do is I get up early in the morning and I have time for meditation and prayer. And I didn't used to have that because I'm a mom of 4 kids, and I had
Oh
little
wow,
ones.
you're a mom of 4 kids?
I am. I have 4 kids.
Wow. Okay, sorry. That just like
Yeah.
I actually did the personal stuff. So wow, you're a mom of 4 kids.
Yeah. So
Good for you, and you're so successful.
And I was just like, the mornings were so hectic. It was just about getting up, getting everybody dressed. And then I had little ones that, much like me, didn't like taking their baths at night. They needed showers to wake them up. So it was like rushing everybody in and out of the shower and getting them off to school. And so I didn't have that time in the morning to just sit and be with myself. And now that my kids are a little bit older, and they can kind of get up and take care of themselves, in the morning I get up and I spend anywhere from 20 minutes to 30 minutes in prayer and meditation, setting intentions for my day, writing down goals throughout the day, things I want to accomplish, and checking them off. And if they don't get accomplished, not beating myself up about it, putting it on the list for the next day. And when I shut down, I shut down.
Now that I know you're a mom, I have a question for you.
Okay.
That many women struggle with this, and it's that balance between your career, children. So how did you, and you have 4 kids, how did you navigate through those difficult moments where you wanted to be with your child, but then you also have work? Did you feel guilty? Because I know many moms go through that guilt. If they're putting too much time to work on their career, then they feel guilty, and that's a whole level of mental health that impacts a lot of females with children. So how did you, what steps did you take to navigate those changes with kids, career? How did you juggle it all?
I'd like to say I did it all well, but I'd be lying. I think in the early part of my career, I was so career driven that I did what was necessary a lot with my kids. I did the necessary. I didn't do as much as I wanted to do because I was so busy working. So I did, dropping them off to school, making dinner, making sure people had baths, getting through their homework, and then it was getting them off to bed. I didn't spend as much time as I would have liked to spend with them. And so when I did finally leave staffing, it was a reset for me. And it was a reset because I had all of my kids, when I gave birth, I always took a year off from work. I wanted to have that first year off with my kids. I didn't want to be dropping them off to the nursery at 6 weeks and 2 months. I just felt they were too young. They didn't have immune systems. I was nursing, I'm breastfeeding. And so the first few years was hard because it was, and I had sometimes, nursing babies. So I would come home from work and it would, you'd have a baby strapped to you as you're typing on your laptop or answering the phone. So it was difficult in the early stages of my career. And when I had my last child, I left staffing, and so I was able to spend more time with him than I did the other three. But yeah, it's a juggle, and you do feel guilty, and you do feel like you haven't done enough. My oldest is 21, and he is on his own. He's working. He goes to school, and so he's been a great kid. So he turned out okay, and that always makes me feel like, oh, okay, I must have been not too horrible. And then my second is going to be 18 this year. And funny enough, I said to him, I asked my kid this because I'm always, I think about I have this kind of relationship with my kids where it's open dialogue. And I asked my 17-year-old, I said, did I ever say anything to you that you remember that really just hurt you? When you think about it, it hurt you. And when he shook his head, yes, my heart sank because I was like, oh my God, what did I say? And when he told me what I said, it haunted me for the whole night. And I apologized to him because I never wanted my work or my own ambition to be ahead of me being their mom.
My next question to you is, when you reflect back on your career, your whole, career journey and your success, what are some of the things that pop up in your mind that you think contributed to your success, like the way you were or the things you did? So when you reflect back, what do you think made you successful?
I think ultimately is that I never put monetary gain over my integrity. I never did that. And I think a lot of people will make the decision to chase money, even at the cost of their integrity. And sometimes when you lead with integrity and you walk away from money, because I've done that, I've always gotten the next thing tenfold better than what I thought I left. And so I think ultimately for me is I always operated from a place of integrity in the work that I did. And I think if you do that, no matter what you're doing, I don't care what the job is, no matter what you're doing, you're going to be successful, and people will recognize that. Because there's something about when you connect with somebody else and you could tell that they're a person of integrity. You'll make room for that person in business, in your job function, because there's something appealing about that. And I don't think it's something we think about as a virtue or an asset, or something that can garner success. But I never traded my integrity for monetary gain or promotion or anything like that. And I think it's helped me be successful.
Yeah, good for you. Last question before we take questions from the audience. My last question to you is your top 5 tips for audience listening right now or individuals that can be listening to the replay. What are your top 5 tips that you would love to share with individuals on how to be successful in your career?
So I'm going to I actually had this written down. And the first was integrity over monetary gain. Your gut is your guide. You have to listen to it. Your gut is your guide. It's what I call your God speak. It's the thing that's telling you the right or the wrong. And so I think we don't trust our gut enough, but you should listen to your gut. It really is your guide. Build real relationships. Don't just network for the purpose of networking. Like, oh, I know Gurpreet. Oh, and let me see if I can get a client out of her, but you don't talk to the person anymore.
Yeah.
Build real relationship. Networking will get you in the door. Relationships will keep you there. So build real relationships.
I think that's one key piece that a lot of people, I'm pretty sure you've noticed this on LinkedIn. A lot of people are not building relationships, and they
No.
just keep sending message after message. Oh, connection, let me send this. If
Yeah.
it's a job
Yeah.
seeker, then it's let me send my resume. It's an entrepreneur, let me send them information on my business. Not even, hey, how's it going, let me
Right.
get to know you. But boom, it's like a pitch.
Yeah.
Something's happening.
It's always a pitch. And I'm
Yeah.
like I said, networking may get you in the door to something, but relationships is what keeps you there. Because if you build real relationships with people that you're trying to network with, and I say this all the time, like you and I's connection, right? This whatever this turns out to be, it may just be a beautiful friendship. Like it's been
Yeah.
for Bill and I. It may be just a beautiful friendship. And I may not have anything in terms of professional value to you now, 3 months from now, 4 months from now. And all of a sudden, 6 months later, we've been connected, we've been friends, we've been checking in. I'm like, oh, Capri, I got this going on. Can you help with this? And this the vice versa. But I think people think everybody wants it instantly. It's like,
Yeah.
and it's like that's not what it's about. Build relationships, keep relationships, rest, relax, and release. I don't care what job you're doing. Rest. You have to be in good physical condition to do work, whether
Yeah.
that's mental work or physical work. Like your body is carrying all of you all the time. Relax. Things are going to be okay. And again, like if you're a younger person, this is going to be like, I can't relax. I think I'm older now. I'm like 42 years old. So I'm in like, relax. It's easy. Right. And just release the things that you can't control, that it's already done. Release the feeling about that. You can't fix it. It's done. Figure out how to move on to the next thing. And then finally, find moments of fun. Life is short. It really is short. And find some moments of fun, no matter what work it is you're doing, no matter how serious the job is, find moments of fun.
No, great 5 tips. Thank you so much for sharing that. And I love the last one. Find moments to have fun, because life is really short. Like we think it's long, but it's not.
No.
Okay, so we're gonna take questions. So I'm gonna just pop through the comments and I'm gonna populate it. Okay, so it's always a risk to open up your own business. How you took all hurdles and problems and get over it successfully? Like, what motivated you?
So what motivated me was the actual work that we do. And so if you've been in, whether you're in a management position or you're just a regular employee, if you've been in a bad company culture, it's not just toxic in the way that you think and see yourself. It's toxic in that it can literally hurt you physically. Like people get sick from jobs that make them unhappy. And so what motivated me was wanting to go and do what I did in the companies I've worked for, to do that for other employees. And so if whatever you're passionate about, you will want to do.
Okay. Vivek, I'm not sure if I understand this question, but I assuming this person's talking about, how you get into large financial debt. And then I guess the question is, how do you get out of it? Which
So
makes
I think what I'm saying is that for most people, we are debt, and I'm the same way. I don't like debt. Like it, I don't like it. I'm one of these people. If I charge my credit card, I try to pay it off at the end of the month. And so for people who are risk adverse or don't like debt, I think it's going to deter you from wanting to open up your own business, especially depending on what it is you want to do. What I do is consulting, right? So there's not a lot of debt
overhead
or overhead in what I do. If you're
agree.
trying to open up a business where you're selling product, or you're having to open a store, then yes, you're going to have to take some debt on. And I get it, but the risk that you're betting on yourself as opposed to betting on working a 9 to 5. And life really is about risk. You can't avoid it. You really just can't avoid risk. It's just the risk you're willing to take.
But you said something earlier when we were talking in the beginning of the conversation. You said you financially kind of planned for it.
I did.
Took it. So I think in this case, what I think it will apply with Vivek too. If you're not somebody that likes that risk and you don't want to take on so much debt, I don't like taking on debt either. If I can't pay for it, then you know, I've never taken a loan as an entrepreneur, just something I just didn't want to do. But I always found a way to get the money. Like hustle, hustle, hustle. I always found a way. But I did like what you said in the beginning when I asked you this question about taking that leap into entrepreneur. And you said that you financially planned for it. So would you say, even as somebody that doesn't like taking, that doesn't want to take a loan and debt, and then you can, if you have a business plan, can you for like maybe plan 5 years ahead? Okay, I'm going to save all this money and then go do it.
You can. And like I said, I planned ahead because I knew I was going into consulting, right? So I didn't need to have money up front. What I needed to have was money to be able to pay my bills until I was able to get clients to be able to bill. And my business partner and I are thinking about moving into non-medical home care. And in Florida, it requires us to have a certain amount of money. And so we are now in the process of taking on some debt to do that, to open that up, right? And so we don't like debt either. But if we want to move our business and expand it, sometimes you're going to have to take on something. Now, take on debt that you are comfortable taking on. And if you're trying to expand your business into something else, just make sure the money that you, or the debt you're taking on, you're comfortable doing that. Don't stress yourself out and don't take on too much debt, and plan ahead. I don't know what business you would be wanting to do, but whatever that business is, plan for it. And so it may be you can't open that business for another 6 months to a year because you're working side gigs, or you're doing a side hustle, or you're working extra hours to raise as much capital for your business. Do that. But the ultimate risk is going to be on yourself, really.
Yeah, I agree. What would you suggest in terms of finding internship during this pandemic? You were a recruiter one time. Do you have any suggestions on finding internships?
It would depend on what field you're wanting to go in. What I would do, depending on where you are, I would research the companies least impacted by the pandemic. The companies that didn't have layoffs, that are basically still running and still operating, and reach out to those companies about internships. It's going to be hard if what field you're in, your industry is impacted. It's going to be hard to find internships because people are going to be looking for jobs. So I would find industries or companies, even if you're in the industry, and there's been a hit, find companies that haven't laid off a lot of people, that weren't really impacted by the pandemic, and reach out to them for internships. But yeah, I would just find industries that haven't really been affected and try to get internships with them.
Okay, next, Ravi, what are your views of changing career and finding jobs, finance to marketing, considering situation as of now? You made a somewhat kind of a change in career. You went from recruiter to now doing no, before you even opened your consulting, then you went into director position to do culture.
Yes.
So that was a big change.
Yeah.
How did you do it?
The culture thing was, if you're a good manager, if you're a good director, you should always be cultivating culture, right? So the culture wasn't a big leap for me. It was just taking all of my management skills around culture and making it into a business. Now, I did go a leap from healthcare staffing into pharmacy, but my entrance into pharmacy was through a skill that I had in staffing. So in healthcare staffing, you had to help nurses get their licenses. So I would be working with licensing boards to help those nurses get licensed. And then I saw a job opening at a pharmacy for a licensing coordinator. Now, it was different licensing, but it's all the same. If you understand how boards work, you can transition that into getting into the pharmacy and then moving into a director position. So if he's trying to find a job from finance to marketing, I would get with a marketing company and see if they have an entry level finance position, because that's what you're trying to do, and then go to your marketing director, whoever's the director of that in that company, and sit with them and say, I'm interested in doing marketing. I'm thinking about changing marketing. How can you help me navigate that? Can I come at the middle of the day or end of the day and just sit and see what you do? Because that's what I did in my career early. I would go into different departments that I was interested in and say to the managers and directors, hey, do you mind if I just kind of sit with you and see what you do? I'm kind of interested.
Job scattering.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that advice. And that's something I also tell people. Listen, if you're looking to transition from one area to a different profession, the best time to actually do it is in your current position and start job shadowing that department.
Yep.
Best way to do it.
Go into your marketing department and talk to your marketing manager, your marketing director, and let them know that you have an interest of moving into marketing. What advice would they have for you? Do they mind mentoring you a little bit in the company? And you'd be surprised. You can move into that right in your current job.
Okay. I think that's it. Okay, wait. A good culture can help cultivate your career growth.
Absolutely.
Okay, so how much do you, so this statement talking about culture, right?
Mm-hmm.
Do you believe, both of us are kind of in HR, and I guess you probably agree, but let's talk about culture. How important is company culture for one's career growth? Because it's one piece, I feel like, when job seekers or career professionals, when they're looking for jobs, I feel this is one piece that everyone overlooks and then get hired in a company, and then it's like, oh my God, this culture sucks. And then they have to go find another job. So how important is it, if you're career driven and you want to be successful in your career, in your opinion, especially someone who is as a consultant in the culture space, building company culture, how important is culture for career growth?
It is the life and bloodline of your company. More companies lose top performers for bad culture than anything else. I know people who have walked away from jobs making 6 figures, walked away and left them. I'm one of those people, because the culture in the company was so bad, and the culture is normally set by whoever the head of the company is, your CEO, your HR departments, your directors, your managers. And if you don't have a thriving company culture, you're not going to get people to want to grow in your organization. They're going to be looking for ways to get out, right? So for the gentleman that asked, how do I go from finance to marketing? If he's in a really good company, he's going to want to transfer within his company. He's going to want to find opportunities within his company because he loves the company culture there. He loves the way he is treated. He loves the way employees are cared for and looked after. And if it's a good company culture, it's going to provide the opportunity for their employees to move throughout the organization. I always say the best talent pool is the one you already have. So if you have really good employees working in your organization and you have a strong company culture, go into your other departments and see who wants to move over, because it'll give employees opportunities within the company. And those employees will only seek out opportunities within a company if the culture is good, if it makes them want to stay there and be there. And if you don't have a good culture, you are going to lose a lot of good employees. It's why Zappos, it's why Facebook, for all of its stuff, and these different these tech companies out in Silicon Valley have made such an effort and an investment into their company culture, because what they want to do is they want to keep top talent. And any company looking to keep top talent, you have to be taking care of the culture in your organization. You just have to.
I feel like you touched on something great, and it's something I was thinking. Yesterday, I was having this discussion with my team, and we're talking about company culture. I'm like, in one aspect, actually, the tech industry is the one that actually forced companies to actually start looking at culture and building strong cultures. Like Google did it, Facebook did it, Silicon Valley. If you go to Silicon Valley, you see, like, I remember visiting a couple of years ago, I visited Samsung's headquarters. I was meeting with the VP of HR and showed me around, and he's like, this has now become a norm. Everybody's doing tech culture. even in Samsung, right? But it wasn't a tech startup. I found that tech startup industry is one that paved and carved the way for companies to start thinking
Yeah.
different when it comes to culture.
Yeah. Yeah. Because it makes a difference. It makes a difference in whether you will seek employment there. Google is still one of the most sought after employments in the country.
Yeah.
It still is. Like, there's a reason why Google is the most sought after, right? People don't talk about Google in terms of pay being competitive. They talk about the culture. Like,
Yeah.
people want to work there because of the culture. And I'm sure there's a lot of other companies paying salaries comparable to Google and probably even better to Google. But why would I take more money if I'm going to, and it just sucks over there? Because eventually I'm going to leave. Most people leave bad managers. And they do. Most people leave bad managers. They don't leave companies. They leave bad managers that sometimes infect company culture. And so our business, our company it is our heart's mission to make workplace better for people that go to work every day. You shouldn't have to leave yourself at home. You shouldn't have to think about, oh my God, if I call out sick, what does that mean? Well, that means you call your boss and say, I'm not feeling too great. Do you mind if I work from home today? Sure. We'll see you when you get better. Like, these are the things that companies need to be doing in terms of creating a culture for their employees.
Great. Yeah. You touched on something great when talking about culture and calling in sick and cannot work from home. A lot of managers till this day have this phobia. And sometimes it isn't even their fault. And because maybe in the past people have lied, but you still got to trust your employees. You can't let your past experiences dictate the current staff. But yes, like simple as if an employee's sick, the first thing you should be saying, yeah, stay home. Stay home. But I think because of COVID-19, maybe that's going to change where we're already working from home. But bad managers, it's a proven fact that people will leave companies no matter how great your company is. But if your manager isn't great, like I've left 2 bad managers, and both times it was where my old boss left and the new one came.
Yep. Same. Same.
So yeah, the old one left, the new one came, and new one was trying to, like, I don't know what they were doing, probably trying to please the upper management and forgot that their right hand is with them. But anyways, but yeah, a lot of people don't understand that your career growth also stems from your manager, because I fully look back at my career and I contribute it back to, my first boss told me from day one, you're an entrepreneur. You're wasting your time here. You're an entrepreneur. I'm like, I'm a new grad trying to get work experience. I know I'm an entrepreneur and that's my journey, but I still want to work and learn the ins and outs of organizations before I jump the leap into entrepreneur. But that's something I always knew I was going to do when I was 16. But yeah, a good manager, like you had a good manager who told you.
My manager looked at me and she said, listen, you're a brilliant girl. A nurse, you're not. And she was like, don't waste your time doing that. And the thing I loved about her, she was a CEO for HCA Healthcare, like one of the big systems. And the good old boys ran her out of that network. And she was a nurse. She had like a 2-year degree. And she was like, I did nursing for a little bit, but she knew she was a business person. She knew she wasn't a nurse either. She just knew. And so I think because she knew she wasn't, she could look at me and see that I wasn't too. She could see that I had more of a mind for business and I did better with people. Like, that interaction with people was just natural for me, whereas it wasn't as natural for her. She was the person doing the business, but she needed somebody to do the front part of it, like who's going to go out and represent the company. And good managers, the one you had, the one I had, is why we're sitting here today. And that's why it's so important to have good managers.
Yes, good manager. But that's the thing, right? Good managers can break or make your career. And my advice on this is don't be afraid to leave a bad manager.
Oh, not at all.
Like, that should not even be a discussion. That should be, this is a bad manager and I need to go find a different job. Or,
Yeah.
I don't know if you have an option to change managers, mostly not.
Mostly not.
And that should be your sign, because bad managers, from my HR experience knowledge, it's really hard to change them. No,
is.
man, it's a lot of work to change them, and no amount of professional development, coaching, and all that stuff is going to instantly change them. It's an uphill battle. Some will change, some won't. But you, as a career professional, you should recognize a bad manager and make an exit plan.
Yeah,
that's my advice.
Well, quickly, I had a friend that had a horrible manager, and she ended up having her gallbladder removed. And this is what I mean, like being in a bad job, in a toxic job, it's not just, oh, I don't like somebody. I mean, it can really affect you physically. And when she left that job, it took about a good 4 months. It felt like a bad divorce. She's like, I felt like I was leaving a husband. It felt like a breakup, and there was a lot of mental work that had to get done, because she was in a job with a bad manager, and eventually she had to have a gallbladder removed. This is how bad jobs can be. And so for us,
it takes a toll on your health.
It does, your mental and your physical health. And this is why for me, my business is not just a pastime, it's a passion, because I know I've created really good work cultures, and I've seen employees thrive in them. And I've worked in them. I've worked in bad cultures, and I've seen bad cultures, and I see the opposite. And so the hard work for those of us in the culture space is getting management and leadership to recognize they have a problem with their culture. Because it feels like a personal affront to you, like you've done something wrong. And it's not a matter of somebody's doing something right or wrong. Maybe you just don't know how to cultivate and motivate your employees. And a lot of times managers are just promoted without any kind of management training, management coaching. Yeah. They just get promoted, and nobody's ever taught them how to be managers, or taught them how to conduct one-on-ones with their employees, or taught them how to resolve conflict without bringing HR into every conflict. So if you have managers that just getting promoted up the ladder and they haven't had any of these training and skills, then yeah, you're producing a bunch of bad managers. And so we try to go in and help those managers learn how to manage conflict and how to motivate and inspire their employees to bring their best self at work, because managers are the front line of your culture. There's individual coaches within the culture. Like there's department coaches within the culture. And so in order for culture to work, managers have to be willing to do the work to make their employees feel safe at work.
And that's hence why, when managers are being promoted within the organization, that's why succession planning is so important. That's why development plan is so important. Yeah. But I find that a lot of times companies overlook these small things that can be really crucial to the manager's success and the team's success. The employees is going to report to the individual their success, right? I know a company that I worked for, one of my ex-clients, one of the managers, just promoted into it, but had no management skills whatsoever. But, it's like, then working with them is like, okay, well, you got to do this, you got to do this, you got to do this. But hey, I have a question for you. If you're going to spend all this money developing this person, what are the chances that this person is developable, right? Like not everybody is developable.
Right.
You're going to spend money, but can this person be developed, right? Like that's a question you have to ask as an organization too before you start throwing money in developing an individual, especially if someone's been doing it for many years. You know the old saying, but I hate to use the saying because I can teach my dogs new tricks. But I have 2 dogs and I can teach them new tricks and they can learn. So I hate to say this phrase that it's such a cliche phrase, but you can't teach your old dog a new trick, but mine I can. But it's the same concept even in organizations, that it's really hard to change people.
Yeah, it is.
people are developed. Like you can develop people, but you also have to recognize before you spend the money, can this person be developed?
You know what helps with that? And I said this in my old company. So my old company, before I left, managers weren't held to a standard that said, like my old company, people would get fired or they resign. And HR and the managers would just chuck them all off as a bad hire, a bad employee, a bad hire. And I think if you switch that to, if you're a manager and in your department you have this percentage of turnover, we're going to hold it to you. So everybody that leaves, I'm not putting that on the bad employee. That's on you. That's on you, Capri. Why did you have 5 people leave your department? You had 3 people resign and 2 people were fired. That's on you. If you hold managers to that, to why people are leaving, if it's on them to make sure they have good employees, then they make sure they have good employees. But if people that get fired and resign just get chucked away as a bad hire, a bad hire, a bad employee, then it doesn't hold those managers accountable. So when you have to be accountable for making sure that your employees stay, that your employees are happy, you put more effort. If nobody holds you accountable for that, then it just becomes a revolving door. And we got to change that hiring and firing process away from just it being the employee's fault that it didn't work out to holding managers accountable for that as well. And if you do that, you'll see a shift in how people manage.
Definitely got to have you on mine and Gil segments because we talk about HR and employee experience, G&G. So LinkedIn Live, definitely got to have you on a guest on that one. We're gonna take one last question, and this is Anna's. What is the best way to find new clients in a new industry? And in brackets, she's an HR consultant.
That wouldn't you be a better person to answer that, Miss HR?
My tip for any entrepreneurs looking for clients is, here's how I found success, is LinkedIn. Hence why I live and breathe on LinkedIn. I use it a lot. You got to add value. You got to start writing content. Your entire marketing sequence should be all about adding value. And Anna, you're already on a great platform and get the clients. You can actually attract clients to come to you. I'm proud to say one thing. In the last few years, I've spent 0 money on advertisement. All I've been doing is focusing, and I've made a shift into adding value in my content. All my clients on both sides of my businesses, the B2B and B2C, both of my clients actually just come from LinkedIn.
So what I will tell you, because one of our biggest client is actually the equity firm that owned my previous company. And so I don't know how businesses are set up in Canada, because I think she's in Canada. If a lot of the
I know Anna. I know Anna.
Okay, if a lot of the companies are owned by equity firms or equity partners, especially if you want to be an HR consultant, I think if you believe that there needs to be a shift or a change in HR, I would start targeting equity firms and equity partners and talking to them about companies within their portfolio. Maybe they've been having some issues with companies and the HR prospect, and they don't know where to go. You know, they're relying on just their HR people. I would say go talk to equity partners and equity firms that own a whole lot of companies, and talk to them about maybe they may be having some HR issues in their organization. And again, because they're equity people, they don't know where to go to find a consultant. So I would say reach out to them. Like I said, it's a client for us because, one, we know the business because we worked there, and we know where where to plug the holes, where those holes need to be plugged in the company. And so talk to, if that's kind of the way it's set up in Canada, there's equity partners and equity.
There are in some firms as well. I would also just add, create strategic alliance partnerships. Like I've done that. I have a couple of strategic business alliances, partnerships, where I refer clients to them, they refer all
Yeah.
HR clients to me, and that's another source of getting leads. So hence networking kind of helps in that as well. But those are the two things that I would say the last 2 years are really, really working for me. Is one is LinkedIn, and second is creating those strategic partnerships more than cold calling. I used to do cold emails, reaching out. It was so time consuming and the conversion was low, but this has been working for me the last few years.
Yeah.
And those two things.
Yeah, I agree. We have a bunch of strategic alliances too. Actually, we just had a call today. And it's from LinkedIn. It was somebody we met on the LinkedIn platform that connected us to, I think Wambi is the company, connected us to Wambi that they were working with and said, oh, you need to talk to these two ladies. They're really good at culture. And so, yeah, strategic alliance is a good one too, for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to end. We went 5 minutes over. I'm going to end this segment. Thank you, Tammy, so much for coming in and having this great discussion about your career and sharing some really, really valuable information. All the comments that you did have come in, a lot of people loved this conversation. Definitely got to have you on my other LinkedIn Live segment, which is all about HR and employee experience. So me and Gil will be in touch with you on that segment. But thank you so much for coming on, spending an hour with us, and sharing a lot of great valuable information. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for tuning in. I'll see you guys. Career Talk Tuesday happens every Tuesday starting today. So next Tuesday, I'll have another great guest coming on, sharing their career journey. If there is individual that you want to see on Career Talk Tuesdays, reach out to me and let me know. You can introduce me to them and I can have them as a guest speaker. But there's a bunch of guest speakers already lined up. So stay tuned. This will happen every Tuesday right here on LinkedIn at 8:30. So I'll see you guys next Tuesday with another great guest. Thank you so much for tuning in. Have a great evening and good night. Thank you.